The Mating School by Jonas Mears, Chapters 21 and 22. Chapter 21. Her legs were heavy as they carried her to her dorm so she could bathe and change into a clean uniform. The eyes of the other students lingered on her as they passed, mostly headed in the opposite direction, but Lily was grateful that they didn't say anything to her or those they were with about her. Sophie wasn't there when she arrived. Probably at breakfast. 30 minutes later, clean and more presentable, she made her way towards abilities class. She was glad she didn't dawdle getting ready, because as she closed her dorm door on her way out, the first bell for class sounded. Luckily, most of the school had dispersed from the dining hall earlier, leaving the pathway towards the staircase, and the corridor beyond it peacefully clear. Her footsteps fell in an even bravado against the stone floor. Was it just this morning that she was a leopard? It seemed odd to her because she didn't feel any different. And yet, she wasn't sure if that was true. At the thought, the power within her seemed to writhe, as if preparing to shift again. But she focused on her breathing like she'd been taught in energy control. She felt like she might need to defend herself at any moment also. Expecting an attack? Maybe because of yesterday. Maybe just because things felt so different now. Her stomach seemed to offer a grudging sound. Maybe she should have tried to get something for breakfast. And yet, she hadn't felt ready to face the school. Would she be ready by lunch? She felt a new interest in her abilities class, as if it was suddenly made more relevant. She couldn't be sure if it was a good thing this class only had 15 students. Maybe because it was smaller, there wouldn't be gossip. Part 2. There were fewer students in the class today. After a quick count, it seemed like at least 7 were missing, including Ryan. Mrs. Harrowstone didn't say anything apart from, "Good morning, dear," as she passed, and she could feel crushing relief. This would be okay. As she sunk into a comforting couch nearest the window, she felt many emotions. Despite the missing students, there was a sense of normalcy about it. She was just sitting here in class. There's no monster chasing her down. "Don't jinx it," said a familiar quiet voice in her head. She found herself smiling, something she hadn't expected in the least bit. She wondered briefly if the voice was her leopard form somehow talking to her, but she quickly dismissed the idea. It didn't seem fitting. Between the relief of the comfort of sitting down on a plush sofa, she felt a sense of unexpected safety. She felt more than that too, though. She felt a contentment, almost. She felt like she belonged. And it was a feeling that she didn't realize she'd been missing for so many years. Sure, there might be gossip later, and she didn't know what Anne might say. She didn't know if she'd be in trouble for missing general agility. But for the moment, at least, she felt okay. Good even. The professor's voice was gentle and relaxing. She listened and took some notes. But more than anything, she felt like she needed to rest and give herself time to calm down. It seemed like shifting into her animal form had caused some kind of shock to her system. Understandably. And now maybe she could give herself time to not only acclimate to the new situation, but also to redefine her reality. Everything had changed so much. The colors looked different, more distinct somehow, and the smells were intense. Not just the smells in the air, but where they were coming from and from how long ago. Was this how others saw things all the time? It seemed like, for today at least, she could slack off on the schoolwork. It was okay that she was only half listening when she needed other, more important things, like time to rest and adapt. Things like trying to prepare for the next challenge to come, aka lunch and the rest of the students. Would Anne be mad at her? And where were the 7 missing students? Was it just this class they were missing, or had they somehow left the school? Chapter 22. "Lily," called Anne from a table in the corner of the dining hall. You found your human again. Lily laughed slightly. I guess I did, she said when she was in talking distance. Wish I had been there when you first shifted, said Anne. From what I heard, it was hella badass. Lily laughed freely. She couldn't help it. Anne's words were so unexpected. I thought you'd be mad. Why would I be mad? Said Anne, taking a delicate bit of her double-stacked BLT sandwich. Because I ditched you in the woods this morning, said Lily. Listen, Lily, said Anne. We've all been there. Shifting for the first time. It's downright terrifying. I'd have left too. It's fine that you did. Lily smiled. She felt grateful to have Anne as a friend. I was surprised you were so calm and in control. Sometimes it takes weeks for the human mind to gain control back the first time. I wish I'd shifted in a private area, said Lily. It was so embarrassing, and other students keep watching me whenever I walk down the corridor. I wouldn't be embarrassed. For all you know, they're probably impressed. I even heard one guy, Clark, in my business practice class going on and on about how you must be a Lycan. Lily and Sophie burst out in laughter. The idea seemed so ludicrous, particularly to Lily. She'd only just shifted for the first time yesterday, and before then she couldn't be sure if she was even a shifter. Well, consider it from his perspective, said Anne. A big cat isn't a very common second form. Plus, he might have thought this was your third form. I don't think anyone knew you'd never shifted before. It's practically unheard of after the age of 16. I guess I can kind of see his logic, given his lack of information, said Lily. But even so, I've never heard of a female Lycan. Nor have I, said Sophie. There was quiet for a while as they ate. Lily found herself wondering about what it had been like when the others shifted. She'd never been able to see anyone first shift in her old pack, in large part because there were too many dishes and linens to be washed. The experience for her had been so far from what she'd imagined. It was like a ladybug being born in a small greenhouse and living its whole life in that space, and believed that's all there was until one day it somehow slipped out of the open door, and suddenly seeing the acres of wild grassland and trees in the distance. What were your first shifts like? Lily asked the other two after a while. Anne laughed before answering. I was screaming to the high heavens for the moon goddess to free me from the bondage of life. And when I finally did manage to turn, after 6 hours, I might add, I nearly bit the throat out of the beta whose transgression was standing 25 feet too close to me. Lily winced. 6 hours? Yeah, it wasn't pretty, said Anne. The beta tossed me aside like I was an underweight kitten, which wasn't far from the truth. I bet Sophie's experience was similar. Mine was very far from flattering, said Sophie, but it was my luck that I was alone when it happened. I'm surprised you're adjusting so well, really. Sometimes it takes people weeks to create a semblance of normalcy. Maybe because I'm a few years older than when most people shift for the first time, said Lily. I guess it's possible, said Anne, but she didn't sound convinced. Part 2. It was several weeks later, and luckily the rumors about Lily shifting had run their course. She was walking with Anne and Sophie in the courtyard garden before their general agility class was due to start. Do you think they're ditching? Said Anne, continuing a conversation they'd had the previous day. I thought ditching class wasn't allowed, though, said Sophie. Maybe they got kicked out of the school somehow, said Lily. 7 students all in one day? And all from the most elite agility class, said Sophie. I doubt it. But I'm in that class, said Lily. It can't be that elite. They turned into a secluded hedged garden. Tulips, blue hydrangeas, and lavender were arranged by height along tidy, lush hedgerows. The aromas mixed in a relaxing way in the warm spring air. "Maybe they're not ditching," said Anne, continuing the conversation. "We checked the infirmary, though," said Lily, "and we didn't see any rooms that look occupied, let alone 7. "Yeah, but I mean, maybe there are other ways to get excused from classes," said Anne. "Not on about that rumor again, are you?" said Sophie. "Well, why not?" said Anne. "Even a rumor can be right on rare occasions." "It's been weeks, though," said Lily. "And even if another lichen was found in one of the packs, it's so unlikely that they'd send 7 18-year-old students to go." "Take care of it," said Sophie. "But it's like you said, Sophie," said Anne. "They're not just any 7 students. They are 7 elite students who are also adults, based on shifter law, one of which is a lichen. Probably the only lichen known in existence currently. I mean, really, who else would they be sending to retrieve a shifter who just transformed into a lichen, and who is probably crazy out of control with his new power and abilities?" Maybe," said Lily. It seemed possible. Then again, any number of things seemed possible. I guess it does seem unlikely that they randomly kicked out the only lichen in existence. Certainly, if that happened, there'd be some information about what they did to get expelled. "My point exactly," said Anne, victorious. "They've been gone a while now. I bet they come back soon with Lily's new lichen mate." "Oh, don't start that again," said Lily, while Sophie giggled. Anne had only recently agreed that Ryan probably wasn't Lily's mate. She and Lily agreed that, although there might be some kind of bond between Lily and Ryan, Lily would probably know in a definite way, particularly after she shifted, if it was a mating bond specifically. And that if it was, there probably would have been more action, to use Anne's term, before now.